A long-horned tiefling looks down over the wide path of the Waitwater. It's more like three rivers braided together, with plenty of islands scattered about. It's slow-moving, it's anemic, it serves for the primary water source for the lands known as Irsh'Kent. As such, most of the lands around the upper river is relegated to scrub and thin grasslands. Still, it is the northern extreme of the Cahill, a vast stretch of land where the great untamed herds of the north-central Ninsweta migrate. They follow hard-to-predict weather patterns, always ending up near the Waitwater around the time snow starts to melt in the faraway mountains. It's now one of those springs, and the great beasts have started to arrive after wintering in the western hotlands. Darcy Del Darling is a blade singer known for freelance work in the Waitwater region of Irsh'Kent, a magocracy run by wizards in the northern reaches of the continent of Ninsweta. Today, she leads a small posse on a hunt for poachers. She's the muscle. The boys watch the prisoners. Irsh'Kent is far from a theocracy, but there is logical value in honoring the treaties with Eldenish to the south. The great god of nature, Balinor, demands the herds be preserved, and so it is done. And if you didn't notice in the last video, I am borrowing the pantheon from Eberron rising from the last war, at least as far as the names and domains go. Yeah, I'm still planning to do that exploration of the book, so I might as well take advantage of its resources. A family of hammertails crossed the Waitwater. It's only just now starting to rise as snowmelt comes down from faraway peaks. They are vulnerable, but Darcy isn't particularly worried. For one, she's captured 3 poachers in 3 days from 3 different groups. She had to kill 5 more, and the ones who got away are likely rethinking their life choices rather than getting back to illegal deeds so soon. The other reason for her lack of concern: if they are still thinking about risking old habits, they have seen what she sees now. A big red dragon has been in the area, doing some hunting of its own. It's an uneasy truce Irsh'Kent has with the volcanic reds and the ice peak whites. He's likely seen her at some point, though it wouldn't likely know her by name. She knows him, an adult with one wing darker than the other, Infernox. She knows he's dangerous in person, and has made no attempt to attract his attention, no matter what secrets he may possess or be willing to share. The ecosystem maintains its status with Darcy as one of its defenders. If it wasn't for the hammertails and other large herds that frequent the area, there would be spots of forest. Eventually, it would all be forest. Protected inside her little town of Mellisby, there are more than a dozen trees, all blue cedar. The balance nature finds is always delicate. Without the large animals stomping around, larger brush and trees would eventually take over a great deal of what is now plains. On Ninsweta, this is amplified by the will of the gods and maintained by the celestial hierarchy. The eldritch forests of the east are distinct, enhanced by nature spirits. Similar spirits watch over the herds and the grazing lands themselves. In her years of traveling the region, Darcy has found herself aided by them and occasionally opposed to them. Luckily for her, they do not hold a grudge. The weather on the high plains has been changing the past week. There was frost on the ground when she woke the day before. Now a cool mugginess hangs in the air. There are clouds on the horizon. No wind blows. Experience tells her it's too cool for a serious windstorm, but something is brewing. Returning to her men, she mounts Honolulu, her griffin, and leads the posse and the prisoners back to town. She rides, not wanting to leave them behind, but it's best anyway when dragons are about. The terrain isn't exactly smooth, but it isn't hilly either. There is a point or two, locally referred to as such. Berry Hill is a strong 50 feet higher than the average. Nell's Peak is artificial, the remains of an ancient tower. If you didn't know any better, you might believe the 30-foot spire on top of the 30-foot rise was a natural lonely karst of granite. Mellisby is a main street, centered on a good well, with 2 streets on either side running parallel. It's all connected by thinner alleyways. These back streets are 90% residential, with about 25 houses each. A small neighborhood of 30 hovels occupies some rocky terrain just to the east of town. In all, the town amounts to a population of 600 residents. In the surrounding 5-mile radius, there is a collection of small farms accounting for another 1,000 people. This constitutes the township of Mellisby. Mage law requires that a township be governed by a mage, but not necessarily of high status. Mage has a local connotation, legally including wizards and most sorcerers. It's the right kind of eldritch knights, and very occasionally a warlock or arcane trickster will get into the civil service. If you can cast magic and want to serve, just ask about taking the exam on your next visit to the capital. While you're there, you might notice there is a great deal of fuss about accomplishments in research and who's been published lately. Out in the outskirts, and Mellisby is definitely that, no one cares that much. Darcy has her civil service permits and pays her dues to the Wizards Guild, but she doesn't care too much about it all either. Despite being ruled by wizards, this is a pretty conservative fantasy setting. There's not a lot of powerful magical items around, and true monsters are rare. Well, except for the occasional kaiju. That's still probably going to be an episode someday. Hashtag, can I kill Godzilla with a longsword? Or what level do I have to be to kill Godzilla with a longsword? Or maybe, should I be able to kill Godzilla with a longsword? Oh, yeah, good old Godzilla. Conservative setting. There are powerful casters, but lasting enchantment is difficult. There are no warforged, and artificers are around, but they are more magical than technical in nature. There are no firearms and no airships. As for a map, I've decided to plop a spot on this guy. Hopefully, this hasn't pushed back my Friday release, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. 7 o'clock on a Monday, map isn't coming together. Haven't recorded anything yet. In retrospect, I've almost certainly splattered maps on the screen already. I'm going to have to cut this part out. Now, I've always said world building is about answering questions, so we're going to get to it. I started off kind of random. First thing that popped up was oceans and sea travel. Obviously, that is not really of direct concern, but it still deserves a little bit of an entry. Now, I suppose there is some northern port, and a degree of trade will travel down the river, but these are not river superhighways. Darcy sometimes canoes down the river in the early summer when the river is at its peak, but even then, it's dangerous for anyone who doesn't have a pool of hit points and a misty step. It's a thrill for her, though, competing with the river for control, the sounds of the strong water, and Honolulu swooping along with her with no dragons in sight. What about addiction? Consider an adventure as the party is recruited to find a hidden beast capable of possessing the town's housewives and turning them to acts of violence. Only they find out there's no hidden beast, but instead an addiction driving some of them to extremes and acquiring their next bundle of leaf. You can't look at world history and fail to realize we humans love our nasty habits. Booze, smokes, and that's just the start of the list. Weeds, pills, powder. It all waxes and wanes in the realm of popular opinion, but it's always there, open or secret. Mellisby has a problem, and it smells sweet and tastes bitter. Dip leaf is a common solution to the town's ills and a curse at the same time. It's recommended for depression, a common problem in Mellisby. For many, it's a way to get through the downtime between harvests. Overprescriptions in recent years have created bigger problems. Let's touch on religion a little bit. There is something of a temple in town. It's little more than a plaza with a little space to get in out of the rain. Holy days are observed here, but it's also the place criers announce important news. Religion isn't discouraged at all. The gods are known to be real, and nobody disputes it. However, it's not sponsored by the state. Instead, the best and the brightest have been pushed into arcane magic for decades, and the results are telling. As far as family, marriage, and casual sorting about, the region is strangely chaste. There is a cultural tradition in the 1 + 1 = 1 sort of relationship, and that's for life. This idea that relationships are permanent causes parents to keep their children away from experimentation. The idea being, they're protecting them from getting trapped in a lifelong relationship with a less than ideal partner. Now, aside from hunting strung out middle-aged women, what is there to do around town? Why would you ever want to world build this place? Number 1. The party is recruited to seek out the remains of a mill decimated by floodwater. It's believed debris may have washed all the way down to the sandbars near town. The mithril cutting surfaces are priceless. The party must keep their mission quiet or risk a rush of treasure hunters. This is mostly a bug hunt, where the party has to fight a few monsters while hunting for the gear teeth. Once found, the party can turn them over for their pay or go outlaw and try to sell them to the highest bidder. Number 2. Big game hunters. The party has won a permit to hunt sabercats and kill up to 4 adults. Number 4. Chase down the poachers. This is a multi-session adventure as the party has to curry favor with small villages to convince them to turn over evidence as to the poacher gang's whereabouts. Let the party use those persuasion checks and intimidation skills to get family to turn on their own so that justice may be done. And number 4, Abomination. A mad wizard has been up to nefarious acts. Kill his mutations and fight your way into his inner sanctum. There, you might have to take him down, or perhaps you'll find that the mutations have already done the work for you. Darcy Del Darling is working in her backyard when the first streak of lightning cracks the sky. An instant later, the atmosphere explodes with thunder. Green clouds boil and churn. She's still convinced there's no danger of a tornado. Then something pelts her in the back. It stings. Another crack to the nearby roof. Then a chunk of ice the size of her fist hits the ground, sending mud flying. It's worse than a tornado. It's a hailstorm. In a series of investigation rolls, perception checks, and dex saves, Darcy has to save her family before they start making checks and taking damage for themselves. As the large chunks start to penetrate the roof, she throws the last child into the protected cellar and dives in after him, slamming the door from behind. Have any of you ever been in a hailstorm? It's not super pleasant. It's almost as painful as ending another episode with you as my audience. Ah, the cheese is real. I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Let me know in the comments if you're up for another Plains episode. I had a request for forests the other day, so that might come next. Our review of Eberron is imminent, and I always have things percolating in my brain pan. I'll see you next time. Cheers.